Cole, why don't you keep it? Let's go to the big one. Oh, we did this out of order. Let's move down one more. No, we're gonna stay with the misery. Let's go to the Penn State Oregon game. We'll come back to
Yay!
UGA Bama. So let's stick with the sadness. Tom, take us away.
I am going to rely on you guys for a little bit more in-depth analysis in terms of what happened on the field. As I mentioned, I was in Canada, unable to watch the game itself. I want to take kind of the macro perspective of what this game means. As I was just mentioning moments ago, Penn State's now in a situation where the most difficult teams remaining on their schedule are at Ohio State November 1st. The very next weekend, you host Indiana in Happy Valley. You have to beat one or both of those teams. And if anything, to convince people that Penn State is not completely fraudulent and just going to do the same thing they did last year or even fall short of what they did last year, because there's a lot of teams that would kill to be in the Final Four of the college football playoff. But still, if Penn State is just going to potentially get an easier game in the first round and an easier game in the second round and get the easiest path ultimately, that's not what Penn State fans are looking for. So the pressure is now on Penn State to figure out what the hell you do with this offense. And that's the thing that ultimately concerns me. And it's something I raised on my own podcast, and I believe I've said it on here as well, is that I think the truth is out there about Drew Allar at this point. I know I've seen enough, having watched every single snap that he has had as a starter at Penn State. He's basically Christian Hackenberg. Now, part of that is condemning him a little bit. Sorry, you're making a couple $1 million a year. I'm going to go ahead and say that. At the same time, the parallels are uncanny. James Franklin wants to run more of an RPO style of offense. He wants a mobile quarterback who can be a true dual threat. The best experiences we had with this Penn State offense were under Trace McSorley and Sean Clifford, as much as Penn State fans want to fight that. Pocket quarterbacks are James Franklin's kryptonite. It's not what he wants to do. And you bring in Andy Kotelnicki, who at first I was very excited about what he did at Kansas, but I think we can all put into perspective what he was doing within the Big 12 to try and get a team that just didn't have top flight talent to take a step up. And he had two mobile quarterbacks, Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean. And Daniels being the more gifted of the two, he could lean on him and they could really create a lot of chaos with less talent, right? It's kind of the objective. Then you come to Penn State, and I noticed it about halfway through last season. I was like, I know Tyler Warren's a unicorn. This is a gimmicky offense. It is unfortunately built on bells and whistles. He wants to run the football, Andy Kotelnicki. He wants to run the football inside. They want to run off tackle. They want to run power. They want to be able to do all these different things where he says it's, a blizzard milkshake and that it's vanilla ice cream with a lot of stuff going on at the same time. That vanilla didn't work against Oregon from everything that I can possibly glean, unfortunately not having watched the game. But every single time that Drew Allar is in a situation where he has to step up, it's wildly inconsistent. His completion percentage drops into the low 50s or even the 40s at some point. He throws a back-breaking interception against Oregon, and he did it against Notre Dame last year. This is who he is. I also think it's a square peg in a round hole. So I've said it on my show, buyer beware to anybody that is thinking about drafting Drew Allar. First round body, I don't know where you put the rest. I really don't. Last year, I heard people immediately after the game saying he should have gone pro immediately last year. His stock would have been higher. He would have been discovered even quicker because somebody would have made him start immediately. And then there would be no telling how quickly his career would flame out in the National Football League. At least now the secret's out and somebody will hopefully be smart enough to grab him in the second or third round and be like, we're going to stash you. We're going to try and develop you. On the Oregon side of this is a very, very good football team that Penn State took to overtime and lost in double overtime to. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, Penn State should drop out of the top 15. Danny Cannell didn't even have him in his top 12, which I was like, okay, like Penn State hung with this team. Oregon is now number 2 in the country. I still don't buy that Miami is not the number 1 team in the country. I understand, yeah, you're sticking with Ohio State. Ohio State was able to survive Washington this weekend. That was when Cole and I were paying attention to. This Oregon team is very well-rounded. They are athletic at the front four. They can beat you with their front four. They can play the run with their front four. They can get pressure. It's a good secondary. I think there were questions about the secondary coming into this game. Penn State doesn't necessarily threaten a lot of people with its pass catchers. So I think that's still going to be something that gets tested through the year. Dante Moore walked into arguably the most hostile environment college football has ever produced, and he did very nicely. DeCorian Moore did very nicely. They have a bevy of running backs that can use. Tierra Hill, I liked a lot. Dan Lanning looked like he'd done a line of blow at the end of that game. He was so jacked up about it. And we always talk about identity with college football. The identity of that Oregon team is we're going to cut your freaking throat. And Dan Lanning has put that into every last player, and they fought to the bitter end. Penn State was trying to wear them out long term within this game, but ultimately it was Penn State's defense that was just on the field entirely too long, and Oregon eventually just broke the dam. So hats off to the Ducks. I would not be shocked if Oregon is in the Big Ten championship again this year, and I wouldn't be shocked if they won it again this year. They have taken the Big Ten by storm. So hats off to the boys from Eugene.
I will give Sleeper a little bit of love. Listen, if you're depositing, use our code CFA, get a 100% match up to $100. We will play the more or less game on Wednesday, where you pick 2 of your favorite picks or more. You can win up to 1,000 times your money. There are some free picks that you can go get right now. Like, I think Jared Goff has like 0.5 as an over-under for passing yards. So, supposing he doesn't get hurt on the first play of the game, should be relatively safe there. Bunch of free picks that you can go and stack together. Check Sleeper's terms and conditions because terms of use do apply. We appreciate Sleeper for their support. Tune in on Wednesday live at noon so we can talk about our picks. And again, appreciate Sleeper for all of their support.
Oregon's a national title contender, in my opinion.
Yep.
They may end up being the favorite, in my opinion. Because it's one thing to win a football game, and it's one thing to win a football game in a hostile environment. Tom is 100% correct. It's a whiteout game. It's a night game out in Happy Valley. And you walked into the belly of the beast and you owned it if you were Dante Moore. That alone is going to be the toughest environment that you will see this year. Neutral site field, Indianapolis. You go to Miami to play in the national championship. That is the toughest environment. It's a testament to the way that you develop talent out in Eugene that we don't talk enough about. It's not always when it comes to landing the right Jimmies and Joes. It comes down to the way that you go through the process throughout every single rep in the offseason, every workout, every film study, nutritional process, all the things that you don't know that go into building a football team. They have mastered it, and it is beyond scary. It's literally emphatic to see how impressive every single year. This team was 113th, if I'm not mistaken, in returning production. They lost their star wide receiver in Evan Stewart before the season even began. They didn't have a legit future running back because they just lost him to the NFL. And what happened? They looked like the better team on both sides of the ball. They were more efficient when it came to running the football. You have Dante Moore locked in, 248 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. You were able to see him connect across the middle of the field. He was physical when it came to making decisions. He was mentally locked on in. And you add all that together, and you look at this defense and the way that it's been able to respond and the way that it's been able to bail its offense out of trouble whenever they have a bad drive and just give it back for a second chance opportunity. And the maturity of these young players. I mean, you had 3 freshmen making plays yesterday. Tierra Hill, DeCorian Moore, and then you also got to remember that you have to throw in, what's his name? Jordan Davidson, the running back. Every single one of them has made an impact on this offense underneath Will Stein, replacing pretty significant shoes that you have to fill. I mean, Tez Johnson is not just a run-of-the-mill wide receiver that you can replace. Evan Stewart, the same thing. Bo Nix, and then you throw in what you saw last year with Dylan Gabriel. Not that easy to duplicate. And they looked as advertised, if not better. And they made it a fight. And then the names that they went out and they brought in the portal, like Dylan Fetterman, the safety from Purdue, get the big-time pick against Drew Allar to kind of lock it on up. And then the trolling afterwards is saying that Mo Bamba's your favorite song. I mean, that's what you need if you want to win. And they have everything that you could ask for from a program. And it starts with the head coach. And then it comes to the other side with the other head coach. And this is where it's really challenging if you are a Penn State fan. because I don't know what is the right answer here. You now have a head coach that is 2-21 against teams inside the AP top 10. He had an opportunity in his backyard with a veteran roster, with returning production, with a stable quarterback, with the best defensive coordinator in college football, in my opinion, to get a win against a team that you have to beat, and you couldn't get the job done. The problem is that there's a lot of people that say you got to move off of James Franklin. Time has got to go out of the window, and you've got to hit reset. Reset is not always a good thing. Reset, honestly, is a very dangerous thing. Because you ask yourself, okay, we've hit a ceiling with James Franklin. What does reset look like? On one hand, you compete for a national title. On the other hand, you go 7-5, 8-4, 7-5, and you're right back at square one. You don't land the right recruits. And as Indiana continues to get better, and as Illinois continues to get better, USC has money out on the West Coast with the NIL collective. You end up taking a massive step back to where James Franklin may have been a limited coach, but at least he had you to where you want to be every single year when you dreamed about this time period for years on end beforehand when it was a 4-team college football playoff. That's the problem. And that's where you are in no man's land. There is a ceiling with James Franklin. And at this point, it is extremely hard to envision a world where, as much as I think Penn State is not going to go away quietly, I don't think they're going to miss the playoff, still think they're going to be a threat to win multiple playoff games. They're never going to win a national title with him there. I think that's just the harsh reality. The best you can ask for is him to get you to the big game. And then once you get to the big game, you find a way to mess it on up. That's what I took away last night, because you really can't ask for much more than what you had at your disposal and still could not get the job done. Still found a way to shoot yourself at the 1-yard line.
Is it too easy to make a Mark Richt comparison with James Franklin?
No, but I mean, it's not too easy. I mean, it's factual, but also
is that too low hanging fruit? I guess. Am I just being too obvious there?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, we've had David Pollock on the show, and he's like, you guys are the Georgia of the Big Ten, like always that team that's kind of bumping up against the juggernauts, right? And it's just, after a while, Georgia found the right guy in Kirby Smart. They broke through. So I am probably in the camp of James Franklin isn't the guy. I think he was gifted some brilliant talent. Saquon Barkley was a generational, program-changing talent that took them almost single-handedly. There was a great supporting cast, but that offense was built around a guy who just could not be stopped at the college level, and you won a Big Ten championship in 2016. Since then, your wins against the top 10 have been against Utah in the Rose Bowl, where Cam Rising died, and then last year against Boise State, and that was Ashton Genty against the world. At some point, a change has to happen. His buyout is enormous, so you have that challenge. But I have said it on this show, I'll say it again, I've said it elsewhere. Beware the Bo Pelini effect.
Yep.
I am, and I think every AD in America should be terrified of that concept, because if you don't have the guy, you can't pull the trigger.
And you can't sell yourself on a guy who is the hottest name in college football that is just going to find a way to make it work. Because Mike Riley was one of the hottest names in college football out at Oregon State. Look how fast that burned. Scott Frost, hottest name out of the G5 level. Pride of Lincoln. Look how fast that burned. Look at where we are right now when it comes to even Matt Rule, year 3. You know, we talk about him and what his direction is. And it's Penn State. In Penn State, you're not going to settle for mediocrity, and you sure as hell are not going to settle for finishing behind teams like Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska. And the reality is that if you have those coaches locked into their long-term deals and they're not on the radar for State College to be the front runner for the job, that's who you are as a program. And you're not getting those guys, they're only going to surpass you. It's a very, very, very dangerous pass. And I know there's going to be some people say, well, why don't I go after Dan Lanning? Dan Lanning is not leaving Eugene unless it's for the NFL. And I don't